this show, semifinals, and it is exciting as we kind of wind down the year. We got a pretty good matchup that we're going to go with. This is the 2 and the 6. Hippos knocked off the champion last week, in a really close one. But nonetheless, he is showing that he wants to stay here. He is here to prove that he is a good fantasy GM. So anyway, it's going to just be a matter of time. Games start on Thursday night again, folks. Don't forget to set your lineups. We also have Saturday games as well, so don't forget about those. So let's get right to the action here with Hips versus Paper. As far as the quarterbacks, Donovan McNabb goes up against San Francisco, who's about mid-range. They give up just as many touchdowns as they do interceptions, though. So it's kind of a give and take there. With Brady, though, he's got a big questionable. Got a finger, I think he got a hip, a rib. He's injured. Now, they have to win this game, right?
I don't know if it's a must-win, but it's one of those games that it's got Belichick written all over it, saying, motivating his team to make them think it's a must-win.
Yeah.
But I don't like what they've got going on as a team against this surprisingly stingy defense at Buffalo.
I know, exactly. I mean, when you think about Buffalo, you kind of think, oh, what a terrible team, blah, blah, blah. But
ugly uniforms.
Yeah, terrible uniforms. But the quarterbacks only gets about 7.5 points a week. They've only given up 10 touchdowns all year long. 23 interceptions the Bills have given up.
Wow.
Have been able to get this year. So it's pretty crazy.
Great stat, Dougie.
So let me ask you this. With Brady being, I mean, obviously the Welker thing's working. Moss, it's kind of looking like it's getting real bad there real quick.
Right.
Is there any chance that you don't play Tom Brady here if you're Paper?
There's zero chance, Dougie. He raped the quitter for Brady. He's been the guy that has allowed you to win, 7 out of 8 games?
Yeah.
With those two things involved in the decision-making, you have to go with what got you here.
Yep. Now, that questionable, I mean, you have to kind of hope and see.
Belichick, he's always questionable.
Yeah, that's true. All right, well, who do you like in the matchups, though?
I like McNabb.
Okay.
But I also think that a lot of the competition that Buffalo has played has been what I would classify as average. So I think maybe those passing numbers are a little skewed.
Okay.
But like you understand, stats are stats.
Stats are stats. And I will go back to one other stat. In week 1, Brady against Buffalo, 21 points. So you do have to keep that in mind, take that into context. But whatever the Buffalo Bills have been able to do, they've been able to do it well. Let's move on. We've been on the quarterbacks for a while. Minoshan Moreno and Ricky Williams, Oakland and Tennessee are both of his matchups. Both are Williams goes up against Tennessee, gives up about 18, and Noshan against Oakland, 23 points they give up. Now, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But you notice Ryan Grant is not in the lineup. Do you question whether he should play Ryan Grant? Ryan Grant has been pretty good for him all year long.
Yeah, I do a little bit, but I also understand why he's doing it. With the matchups that Moreno and Williams have, they're can't-miss matchups. The defense they're playing, the other teams are either out of the playoffs or they're just not good at stopping the run. And one of the few things that Pittsburgh has been good at this year, defensively towards the latter stages of the year, is run D.
Well, I'm going to throw something out to you. Last week against Cleveland, they weren't good against the run D.
They weren't good at anything.
And now that they're out of the playoffs, how motivated are they going to be to play?
That's a good question because they're not used to being in this spot. They might want to call like the Loins and say, hey, what do we do here? We're out of the playoffs.
And the Lions could go back to, say, week 3 and say, well, this is usually what we do starting with week 3.
Right. It's a tough question, and there's no real good answer because Pittsburgh has not been out of the playoffs since the 30s.
Well, would you be surprised if he put Grant in there?
I would not be surprised. Either way, I think all three have good matchups.
Okay. On the other side of things, Thomas Jones has a tremendous matchup. Atlanta gives up about 19 points to opposing running backs, 9 touchdowns. Here's the big stat. How many passing touchdowns do running backs get against the Falcons? You get what I'm saying out of the backfield?
I do. I'm going to go with 2.
7. 7 touchdowns that opposing running backs have gotten out of the backfield out of Atlanta. Now, Thomas Jones does a little bit of that, but that's going to be a little bit of Sean Green. So you have to be a little concerned. But Thomas Jones has every opportunity to have a good day against them. Now, we go against Jacobs as well. Jacobs has Washington. And when you look at Washington, about 14 points, they give up 6 touchdowns.
And both of these running backs are are now or have been the primary offensive weapon, especially with Thomas Jones, with the Dirty Sanchez not really being very accurate or a good QB so far. They really rely on the Jones, and now the weather is shifting. You look for Jacobs to be a huge part of the game plan.
Last time Jacobs played the Redskins, he had 12 points, so maybe you're hoping for 12 if you're paper here.
Right.
Now, go back to the wide receivers. Roy E. Williams, Calvin Johnson, Santonio Holmes is on nipple side of things. Let me ask you a question. Why isn't he not playing Mike Sims Walker?
That's a great question, Dougie, and one that a lot of the writers that cover the nipples are asking. Get Roy Williams out of there and bring in Sims Walker is what most people are thinking. But I think I might have an inside track as to why thought process behind bringing in Williams, Roy E. Williams. Even though he can't catch very well and runs bad routes and is not on the same page as the Romo, it's going to be a high-scoring affair.
Okay.
I mean, New Orleans is going to slap a beat down on Dallas, and it's probably going to be early and often.
Okay.
I have one reservation to that thought. What time is that game?
That game is at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night.
I'm afraid that it's going to fall under what I would classify as prime time. Which
we
means
all know what we mean when prime time happens.
Dallas is going to lose, and Romo's going to have 4 to 5 turnovers and have a horrible game.
Okay. Let me throw this out to you. Mike Sims Walker plays against Indianapolis Colts. The Colts gave up 21 receptions to Brandon Marshall.
To one receiver, not a team.
Who's clearly the number one receiver. And Mike Sims Walker, maybe not clearly anymore, but he's kind of goes up and down.
Right.
That said, I think that the Indianapolis Colts get up big on the Jaguars here. You're in the same exact situation.
I agree. And
they'll probably pull out their starters.
And Sims Walker can catch.
Yeah. So there we go. Just a thought. Throw that out to Nips. I'll be interested to see what happens. On the other side of things, you got Wes Welker, Marcus Colston. Now, when we talk about Welker, we said the whole thing with Brady. He hasn't been affected by this.
Right.
He's actually been the beneficiary. So that's good news for paper. With Marcus Colston, again, against Dallas here, Dallas gives up about 17 points to opposing wide receivers, 8 touchdowns throughout the year. Not a bad matchup. Now, we'll quickly, who do you like out of those wide receivers? Which side?
Out of those two, I like the greatest show because I'm not a big Roy E. Williams guy.
Okay.
I love Calvin.
You don't like this?
I don't like the first down sign. Like he's finally got one. I don't like Roy. But I like the other matchups. They're good matchups for the Nip.
All right, quickly, we need to talk about one thing. Roddy White is on the bench for paper. The Darrelle Revis rule. You've got to be a little bit nervous, though, if you're paper, because this is maybe your one of your best wide receivers, probably your second best behind Welker.
Dougie, this is the biggest game in the 2-year career of the and his greatest show. And you're going to tell me that you're going to sit one of your most highlighted players because of one defensive back? The answer is yes. Revis is pimp.
Yeah.
I would sit him as well.
He's good. You just got to be nervous, though.
Yeah, you are nervous. Yep. And he is one of the reasons why you are where you are.
Yep.
But Revis, don't do it, man. Revis is pimp.
All right, tight ends, Antonio Gates against Cincinnati. Cincinnati gives up about 5.5 points to opposing tight ends. But then on the other side of things, he's going to run 2 tight ends, Vernon Davis and Fred Davis. So you like both of those matchups. Both of them are really, really good matchups. Yep. And so
they're both like receivers.
Yeah, so I don't mind either one of those. Yep. On the Ravens side of things, you got the Ravens against the Bears who give up about 7 points. And then you got the Patriots against the Buffalo Bills who give up about 10.
Wash.
Okay. So, who's going to win this matchup as we quickly conclude?
I have it as another upset, and I think that the Hippos' momentum is just too heavy for the greatest show, who lost his matchup last week against the Mighty Trash. I just think it's too much for the greatest show to bear. I'm going Hippos in a nice, close matchup.
I would go Hippos as well. Obviously, I don't even know if we're doing the whole count thing anymore. I think you won. But regardless, I would like to see Hippos win this matchup. Obviously, it's Shula against Shula, so I'm pulling that. I want both of them to do well.
Go Shula.
But nonetheless, I will go with Hips on this one. We'll be right back with the big matchup of the week, the other semifinal match.